Buenas tardes a todos, les habla Bastián Romero, investigador de la Fundación para el Progreso. Les quiero dar la bienvenida a esta actividad titulada El individuo, el Estado y el colectivo en el pensamiento de Ayn Rand. Esta actividad está programada por la Fundación para el Progreso en conjunto con el Centro de Estudios Libertarios. Y antes de continuar, me gustaría recordarles que nos pueden seguir en nuestro canal de YouTube, se pueden suscribir y darle clic a la campanita para las notificaciones de nuestros videos. Además, nos pueden seguir en redes sociales, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram y TikTok, donde publicamos contenido a diario. Les quiero recordar también que en esta ocasión la actividad va a ser en inglés, por lo que contaremos con un servicio de traducción simultánea para el que desee escucharla en español. Bueno, hoy contamos con dos invitados de lujo. A mi derecha, Tal Tsfany, quien es presidente y director ejecutivo del Instituto Ayn Rand, se mudó a Estados Unidos desde Israel en el 2006 con Amdocs y una empresa de software de telecomunicaciones. En Israel fue director ejecutivo de Kidum, la mayor empresa en educación privada antes de que se vendiera a la Universidad de Kaplan. Tal, además, es cofundador del Instituto Ayn Rand en Israel. A mi izquierda tenemos a Aaron Smith, quien es instructor del Centro Académico Objetivista, del programa Campus y del programa de pasantías del Instituto Ayn Rand. El Dr. Smith recibió su PhD en filosofía de la Universidad Johns Hopkins, donde su investigación se concentró en la teoría del conocimiento de Aristóteles. Además, ha sido profesor de filosofía en las universidades de Maryland y del condado de Baltimore, donde también ha enseñado cursos de filosofía griega, teoría moral y epistemología. Bueno, ahora para comenzar ya con el panel, voy a hacer la transición al inglés. Hello, Tal. Hello, Aaron.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. Very good. Loving Santiago so far.
That's awesome. So I would like to start by talking about Rand's moral and ethical defense of the rational individual. So one of the ideas Rand's work is most known for is her view of the rational individual as an end in itself, as well as a philosophical basis for how to see and for how to understand one's position in the world, in social relationships, and even in power. So my question for you would be, under objectivist ethics, understood as an objective, metaphysical need for the survival of the human being, by matter of reality and the nature of life. In Rand's vision, what is the role of the individual in his or her relationships with others? Anyone?
I'll let Aaron.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first to go back to the point about the centrality of reason. So you asked about the rational individual. Why is that so central? The reason why it's so central is that reason is your only means of knowledge, and that what life and success requires primarily is knowledge. Knowledge of the world around you, knowledge of your own nature as a human being, knowledge of the kinds of values that you need to actively pursue and achieve if you're going to live and be successful and flourish. So life is a knowledge problem, and then you need to act on that knowledge. And this is one of the reasons why her view is that when an individual is living in a social context, like in a society with other people, fundamentally what he needs is freedom. He needs the liberty to actually act on his own judgment, the liberty to act on his own reason. And this is why it's the move from the centrality of reason to the need for freedom, because what reason needs is freedom. Otherwise you get is, you can form a view in your own mind, but then you can't act on it. You can think that this course of action is good, but then the government or society or a criminal says no. And so what it does is it shuts down the mind. It makes the mind, it makes reason irrelevant to your actions in the course of your life. So what reason is your means of knowledge. What reason needs is freedom. And in a social context, this means individualism. It means you as an individual have the moral right to pursue your own life, to live for your own sake, granting the same right to other people. That's it. That's what it means to have an individualist philosophy. So the government in this role is your agent. It's the agent of individuals. It possesses no rights that you don't. Technically, it doesn't possess any rights. What it does is you have the right to your life and you have the right to self-defense. And what you do is you delegate that right to the government so that there's a distinct agency whose task, and only task, according to objectivism, is the protection of your rights. And that's the only use of force that is allowed in society. It's a retaliatory use of force. It's a protective use of force. So just imagine a world in which you could not initiate force, and this includes the government, on any individual. That was the only ban, or the fundamental ban. That's what it would look like to live in an individual society where people could function. Yes, we said reason, right? The centrality of reason, it's your means of knowledge. People will be irrational, and they'll have to pay the penalty. That's part of freedom. Some people will be irrational and they'll suffer for it. But what you want to try to do is unleash and unchain the rational and the productive, and then you'll have all that you need. You don't have to worry about the irrational.
I would just add that I don't think we really understand the word individual or individualism. What does it mean? From the moment you're born, you're taught to be part of something. Part of a country, part of a family, part of a tribe, part of whatever. And the minute you are trying to be an individual by, let's say, playing with your toy, and your mother comes to you and says, hey, share the toy with your friend. And your inclination as a kid to say, no, it's mine. I want to play with the toy. You are being accused as being selfish. Now, if you think about what's going on there, the child is taking care of himself. He wants to eat the food. He wants to play with the toy. And then we enforce a lot of external views on that child to say, no. Taking care of yourself, putting yourself first, is somehow bad. You have a commitment to other people, to your family, expectations, culture. And Ayn Rand is a radical individualist, to the point where she says, she called her book on ethics, The Virtue of Selfishness. Why is it good to be selfish? In a good way. I mean, she means rationally egoistic, rationally self-interested. Because she thinks that caring for yourself, you all brushed your teeth this morning, right? Right? You're very selfish in that regard. You brushed your teeth. Why? Because you put your life as the center of the thing that is important in the world. When you die, the world ends. There's no more world, not for you. So the standard of everything that is good is you. Your mother, your child, your family is important not to me. It's important to you because of you. You give them the value, right? So she identifies the fallacy of all of the religion. I come from a Jewish religion. Some other people come from Christian religion. Doesn't matter. Basically all Western religions tell you being selfish is bad. Being selfish will get you to hell. And she reverses everything. She says, if you really understand human nature, we are organisms that all they should care about is their own life. Whatever promotes your life is the good. Whatever diminishes, risks, threatens your life, harms your life, is the bad. If you take that really all the way, what does it mean? You will see that the application of this morality is a capitalist society. So the role of ethics is to explain why we need a capitalistic, what she called laissez-faire capitalism. Leave me alone. Because she says you don't owe anything to anyone. And so a society of free people to pursue their own happiness looks like we put government as a monopoly on force, as a, like you said, retaliatory agency to just react to whenever somebody's using force to convince me to live my own life. It's a society where you're free to make any mistake you want. You're free to be poor. You're free to be racist. You're free to go open a commune and live under communism if you wanted to. It's a free society. Everybody gets to do whatever they want and pursue their own values. It's a full separation of morality and politics or government. And sorry, not politics, but morality. And it's the same as the separation of state and church. She says a separation of state and economy, state and ethics, and so on and so forth. So if we really understand what it means to be an individual, that she says the smallest minority in the world is the individual. We are the oppressed minority, the individual, right?
But
and, yeah.
You say that, and it's kind of funny. It is kind of, it's funny, but You just, well, you're going to ask us later, I think, about, I'm sure this is going to come up, more about ethics and the way we think about ethics. But I want to say one thing is that there's an easy way to misunderstand Ayn Rand's perspective. I don't know how much of you have read Ayn Rand or what your familiarity is. But to say that your own life is your ultimate value, I mean, that's an egoistic form of ethics, doesn't mean it's your only value. It means it's your ultimate value. That's a big difference. I mean, I think it's obvious. How many of you guys want to have friends versus no friends? I mean, obviously, yeah, I'd rather have friends than no friends. How many guys want romantic love in your life? You fall in love with someone, it's like, of course, yeah, why not? Like, of course we'd want that. How many of you guys learn from other people who are smarter and know more than you? Absolutely. How many of you want to make your own shoes? I mean, none of us can make anything in this room, like literally. Well, I don't know, maybe some of you guys are artisan or something, we can make a shirt. Maybe you guys can make a shirt. But who wants to do that with your life? Now you're a shirt maker. I thought you wanted to work for a think tank, right? So the whole division of labor and the ability to massively and quickly expand your knowledge and trade and get wealthy and stuff, that's only possible because you're in a win-win relationship with other people. So the idea isn't just you live for yourself, it's dog eat dog. The idea is, no, you seek out relationships that are rewarding, relationships that are valuable, and those relationships, I said I was going to speak slowly for the translator. Those relationships can be ones of friendship, they can be economic relationships, they can be romantic relationships, they can be just coworkers you respect, and so there's too much of critics of egoism, and some forms of egoism should be criticized. But the critics of egoism will often think that you're atomizing, you're breaking us up into little atoms that live little isolated lives and little narrow, meaningless lives, and that's just bizarre. If anybody thought for themselves and asked themselves, what would a selfish life look like for me if I really tried to make the most of my life and just wring out of life the best I could get? I mean, nobody would say, oh, I'll be a hermit and just sort of live in a cabin off on my own. It's bizarre.
Right, so that's actually a good point to transition to the next question, because Rand also proposes a moral and ethical defense of the market. And she puts a lot of emphasis on a justification of capitalism beyond material relations, beyond exchanges and cooperation. But instead she puts the emphasis on its fundamental value. So she presents capitalism as a consequence and as an ideal of a set of ethical values that give origin to this form of economic organization. So for Rand, capitalism is, from the outset, a social system that is based on the recognition of individual rights.
Correct.
So my question for you would be the following. How can this fundamental idea help you understand capitalism outside of the explanation that traditional mainstream economics gives to markets?
Well, one thing in what you said it's a social system, or maybe you said social economic system. Capitalism is both an economic system, a social system, and a political system. So that's, you can call it a socio-political economic system because all three of these components are there. So as a social system, it has to do with your interrelations with other people when you live in society. And the basis of that relationship, as she said, is the moral principle of individual rights. The idea that every individual has the moral right to pursue his own happiness. You have your, as we say in America, your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? This is yours. But everybody has that right. So when you interact with other people, your obligation is to respect that right. And what that means in actual practice is that there's no initiation of force between individuals, and you deal with other people by reason, by persuasion, and through trade. So relationships are voluntary, and you can go your own way. If you don't want to participate, you don't want to engage in a trade relation, you don't want to have a relationship with somebody, don't do it. So people can go their own way, but they can form communities, they can form relationships. So it's no force. From a political perspective, the government's role then is to play the role of an enforcer of individual rights. And it doesn't mean it's literally just a policeman, because it requires a legal system too. So law is a form of force, but it's a proper one, because you have to actually define what individual rights are, where one person's rights begin and where another person's end, how to apply rights in the case of intellectual property. I mean, it's a complex thing. It's not just that I stare into your soul and I see the rights that are written there by God. No, it's not the way it works. I mean, you have to actually, because what it means to define a right is it means to identify a sphere of action in which an individual must be free to function if he is to be able to enact a rational code of morality. And that has to be identified. And Ayn Rand does a lot of work identifying that. So from an economic system, it's free trade. And so when you go out advocating for liberty, think about it, you're advocating for intellectual liberty, like the ability to think and write and publish and criticize and so on, or the freedom of action, just to go walk down the street, go take any action that you want that doesn't violate other people's rights. Economic activity is not some special strange species that you have to have a different defense for. It's the same thing. The defense of economic liberty is simply the defense of an individual to live by his own judgment. His judgment happens to be in the context of trade at that point. Is it time for our companies to merge? Well, let's talk about it. Do you want to accept my terms? Well, let's think about it. You know, this is what it means. And then I think, does it make sense for me to actually do this? Or maybe he just wants to buy me out, or whatever it is. Or maybe we just say, no deal. I'm going to hang on to my company. So this just means I need to think what makes the most sense for me, and I need to have the freedom to enact it, not have the government tell me, no, you can't merge, you need to do this and that. Well, that's one example, but it's all over the place. I want to open up a bicycle shop. It's all the same thing. I want to be a masseuse or a hairdresser, and I need a license from the government to cut someone's hair. That sort of thing. It's all of this means the government inserts force between your mind and your judgment and your life and your actions. And so it's the defense of capitalism is simply an aspect of a defense of reason, which is and a corollary of that is a defense of an individual's pursuit of his own happiness. So,
I want to take that get your question into a more broad view. Philosophy in general answers 5 questions. The first one is, where are we? That's called metaphysics. Are we here?
yes.
Is there only one word? Yes. The answer is yes, by the way. You are here. I am here. No, because some people will tell you you're just a figment of my imagination or whatever. So that's metaphysics. And in that realm, Ayn Rand rejects any supernatural. She rejects the existence of God, the existence of any, someone in other dimensions that tell us what's right and what's wrong. She says there's no proof for that, and a rational person would not follow faith-based knowledge on that level. So she rejects. This is why objectivism is an atheist philosophy. That is the first thing. The second thing, okay, now we know the nature of reality. Now we can ask ourselves, what is the nature of consciousness and its relationship? So the question is, how do you know? That's epistemology. And her answer to that question is by reason. The only way for you to know something is by the power of your mind to abstract reality with the power of language and to say, you are here, I know this is a glass, I know this is a table, okay? And the reason, by the way, I will challenge you to define a table. You'll see it's pretty hard. But it's a very unique human capability to abstract existence into concepts. And a table can be round, can be on 3 legs, 4 legs, 5 legs, whatever. You know how to identify a table and to abstract reality. She says the only way to do that is through reason. She says emotions is something you feel. We can talk about it later. It's not your tools of cognition, it's by reason. Now, if you take those 2 questions and you merge them to the next question, you come to the question of what is the good? That's ethics. And that's, I think, one of the most important questions. What is good for a human being? Because we're not born like animals, burnt inside the hardware. I love squirrels, so I always talk about squirrels. A squirrel knows what to do. They come to the world. They're like, I know how to live a squirrel life. You don't have to send me to school of squirrels. I will just know how to find my nuts, find my hole in the tree, and live a really good squirrel life. You drop a baby in the forest, what will happen to it? It will die. It has no means of survival. It needs to develop its means of survival for many, many years to come to be able to do that. So when she says, what is the good is whatever is right for a human life. A squirrel cannot live like a fox. It has a nature. And all of morality is discussing the nature of what is human life. Our means of survival is reason. This is why we need to live by reason. Everything that promotes our life is the good. Everything that detracts from our life is bad, right? And the standard of morality is not commandments from God. It's whatever we can derive by reason, by the study of the nature of humans. And she comes to a whole philosophy of morality, not by commandments. By the way, don't kill other people. Yeah, Judaism and Christianity got that right. Don't lie. Great. Worship a god? Why? Where is it? So she separates the right from the wrong, and she comes to an understanding of the real answer to the question, what is the good, is to be self-interested, rationally self-interested. And that's how you should live your life. From the moment you wake up, the only thing you should care about is your own life. And like Aaron said, part of taking care of yourself is to care about other people that you find valuable. You don't owe them anything, but if you have a mother and father that loves you and they invested in you, love them back. If they're horrible people, run away. It's all about your life. You don't have any commitment from God to do anything other than judge your own life. That's on the level of morality. Now the application of that to the fourth question is, how should we live together? That's politics. And he said, okay, morality shows us that the way to thrive as a human being is to be interested in your life, your own values. Nobody gets to tell you what to love. I love race cars. I love tennis. I love abstract ideas. You love something else. I don't know what you love. You cannot tell me how to live my life. I cannot tell you how to live your life. Nobody knows, by the way. There's a famous scene in The Fountainhead. Atlas Shrugged, I don't know if you read The Fountainhead. There's an architect, his name is Howard Rourke. He's the kind of protagonist. And his friend is asking him, Howard, what should I do? Go work for that company or that company? And the answer, he says, is brilliant. He said, you made a mistake by asking me. Because nobody can answer the question, what do you want? It's an internal question. You can learn from other people. So the application of morality in politics is, leave me alone. Leave me alone. And don't hurt me. Right? So that, if you take that to the extreme, this is why Ayn Rand offers a foundation, a moral foundation to politics of a free market. Not because it works. It works, by the way, because it aligns with the nature of humans. This is why you try to put communism or socialism. It's not that, oh, it's evil because it doesn't work, because, von Mises told us. It doesn't work because of the nature of humans. I lived in a commune. I grew up from the age of 9 to the age of 16 in an Israeli kibbutz. I don't know if you know what it is. The Russians, coming out of Russia, that came to found Israel, said, okay, we tried communism in Russia, it didn't work, it will work in Israel. When I moved, they took all of my belongings. I became a number. My number in every shirt was 318. I don't know if you read Anthem, she talks about this kind of world. I was separated more from my parents. I lived in a kid's house. I was the property of the kibbutz, the commune. Do you think this is the way to live a human life? When I got my tape recorder as a gift from my bar mitzvah from my family in the city, they came to take it away because I'm not allowed to have something other kids don't have. What do you think a 13-year-old thinks where he gets a tape recorder that he really wants and it's taken away? That's where I rejected the completely, because I lived it. I am not a bee, I'm not an ant, I'm a human being. So I need my own property to project my own life. So this is why I think Ayn Rand is the best philosopher to give a foundation for the case of capitalism, which means basically leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, and there's government that will adjudicate if we have any quarrel. And then, by the way, the fifth question that people ignore is aesthetics. Why do we need art as human beings? Why do you cry in movies? Why do you listen to music? Why do you buy sculptures and read books of stories of heroism? If you understand the nature of human beings and our ability to conceptualize the world, we need fuel for that capacity. And that capacity is art, to show you what's possible. This is why she says romantic art, the art that shows you what's possible, the good, the beautiful. If I go to look at David, Michelangelo's David in Florence, and I see this guy who's about to go to war with sharp focus, ready for a fight, it inspires me. If I go to a museum to see a toilet by a modern artist, what is he saying to you?
Nothing.
Nothing. Or life is miserable, right? So her conclusion to the question of aesthetics is the possible, the beautiful, the grandeur of man. So you see, everything is an integrated system that Ayn Rand offers, called objectivism, as against subjectivism. The world is objective. We have a rational mind, and this is how we engage with reality. If you take that to the extreme, I would call it the rational extreme. 2 and 2 is always 4. Why do we accept that as black and white in mathematics, and we don't accept that in philosophy? Oh, you have your own truth, I have my own truth, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Hindu. Who's right? So Ayn Rand offers, for me, the most modern, advanced philosophy available to humans called objectivism. It has no contradictions as far as I can tell. In my everything else that I've studied has a lot of inner contradictions. It's completely consistent with rationality, and she answers all the questions. And I think if you, working in a think tank, trying to protect the liberty and the politics, let's say, of capitalism, you need to understand the underlying layers that make capitalism good. I think the left is way ahead of us because it fights for what's good. If we accept that the good is to take care of the poor, this is what's important. They win every day because they're the good. And you're capitalists who want to make profit for yourself. You're egoists. You're bad. You'll always lose. What's the name of the person that...
Camila Vallejo.
Camila
Vallejo.
If she says on TV that she prefers everybody be poor, then we're going to have extra rich people. Why is she saying that? She's not stupid. She's saying that because she believes this is the good. This is the moral. This is the ideal. What ideal are you offering? Do you know to describe what does it mean to live in a free society? I'll tell you what it looks like. There are extra super rich people. There are some poor people. A free market rewards the rational, the productive. There are no safety nets. It's horrible. No safety nets. There's no social security. There's no intervention of the government in any social program. Sounds horrible? Let me just take you back to the 19th century to give you a glimpse on how America was before there was any public school, any public road, any public anything, hospital. It was thriving. You couldn't even find an orphanage to donate money to because they all had too much money. When you leave people free, they produce so much wealth, so much stuff. There's more than enough to go around. And rich people don't really make the money to eat more. They make it because they love it. So truly, the morality of free society needs to be discovered by people who are trying to defend it. Right? Not because of Austrian economics. Austrian economics is great in explaining why, in a way, how it works. Rand explains why it's good. Okay, and that's I think that is what we can offer you, maybe later in the Q&A, to give you that philosophical foundation to go out and fight the left on a moral foundation. Sorry I took so long.
And I know you've got more questions, but let me put one little point on that. Let me just formulate that a little differently. I would say that you can't win this case without Ayn Rand schools. Now you have to come to think about, like, do I agree with that? Do I think that's true or not? But I certainly think it's true. I don't think you can win the fight for liberty unless you have Ayn Rand's moral foundation for it, and unless you can come to understand and know how to defend reason as man's means of survival and his means of knowledge. So it's you can't win. You could. There's all sorts of skirmishes that you'll win, and that's a good thing. But until you can convince enough people that it is morally appropriate for an individual to be left free to function, to live his own life for his own self-interested goals, if you can't convince people of that, you will always have the other side having the moral high ground, including people within your own movement, people on the conservatives or on the right, as you call it, will accept that view that no, but there's other people, and then there's the poor. If you can, one, if need generates a moral claim on you, anyone's need, someone happens to need something, education, healthcare, whatever it is, if need constitutes a moral obligation on others, it's over. If that is accepted, it will continue to leach into your system, and they will say, well, what about this? What about this? Here's some guy who doesn't have any education. What about him? Well, then it means we have to do it. So that's the altruism, that it will constantly leak in until you can convince enough people that it's right to live for your own sake. It's the moral and the good and the noble. It's a pinnacle to be able to have a society where you can live for your own sake. To stand on that mountain and make that point, now you're powerful. If you're not willing to do it or don't think it's right, it will always chip away at liberty or destroy it. So,
right, that's great actually, because a crucial point on the debate on objectivism is Rand's view of the role of the individual as in relation with others, in respect to their duties, their rights, and other considerations. And this is what she meant by collectivized ethics. And she presents us with this concept called the fallacy of the frozen abstraction, which, briefly explained, is when there's a general abstraction or an ethic being substituted by a specific ethic, which is the altruistic one. And she warns us that the danger of this fallacy is to accept the premise that the individual belongs to society and therefore has the right to dispose of others, their goals, and their achievements. So my question for you, and this is a little bit longer, how much and what relevance would Rand's ideas about the dangers of collectivized ethics have for the current debate, taking into account the increased size of the state as a result of the pandemic and the growth of statism as a logic of political power?
I think just to clarify the point about what Ayn Rand calls collectivized ethics. So in her book, The Virtue of Selfishness, there's an essay called Collectivized Ethics. And what she's talking about in that essay, it's an excellent essay, by the way, very short, very powerful, is that she points out a certain kind of phenomenon where when you and I interact on a one-to-one basis, just you and me, right? You and your hairdresser. I don't have a hairdresser. I am my hairdresser. I have a great relationship with my hairdresser. No, you interact with your hairdresser. You interact with your barista. You interact with somebody at work. Your view of them on a one-to-one interpersonal relationship is not, you owe me, your life and resources belong to me, and they're yours for me, and they're mine to command. They would say, go to hell, get out of my face, and yet, whenever we think of some sort of public goal, some sort of social goal, education, healthcare, minimum wage, all of that goes out the window. The reality of individuals, actual individuals with lives, goals, families, plans, goes completely out the window. They become completely invisible to us, and we simply blithely vote to just, we need a public park. Well, where's that coming from? I don't know. Healthcare. These guys are sick. They need healthcare. So let's just vote for a plan to raise people's taxes and build some. It just completely goes out the window. So that's what the collectivized part is. Person to person, we tend to be more individualistic. We tend to respect the individual more. Somebody lets you in traffic. You're like, hey man, thanks a lot. we tend to have that relationship. When we think about public goals, social goals, I use the air quotes because I don't think about it in those terms, but we completely ignore the individuals and we treat them as just so much material we can use for our ends.
I would just say, think about what it means for us here. Let's say we're a society, just people here in the room, and everybody knows each other, or we're very great, and we're the politicians say, yeah, well, let's build a park. What I'll have to do right now is to go to each and every one of you, ask you to take your wallet out, give me $100, because I decided that we need to build a park. That's going to be hard. But like Ayn Rand said, once we, in a specific size, there's almost like a new invisible entity that is created called common, or public, or common good. That entity doesn't exist. There's no common good. There's no real Chile. Where is it? Can you give me Chile to talk to? Can you tell me what Chile will advance? What does it mean to do something good for Chile? Who in Chile? Some guy wants to build a park, some guy wants to build a racetrack, some guy wants to build a skyscraper, some guy doesn't want any at all. Right? So this is what I said. Do you offer an ideal to the public? Because the leftists are really good at that. To say, our ideal, we all live in harmony. Everybody is equal. Everybody has free food, free hospitals and health, free education. We all love each other. Kumbaya. We go jumping in the fields. You don't have to work much. Everybody does whatever they want. Somehow, it's beautiful. I can build a whole picture out of that. What are you offering? What you're offering is not easy to understand. This is why it's so hard for the right to win. I'm offering nothing. I'm offering freedom. I do that exercise. Let's say that all of us who are fighting for free markets will snap our finger together, and Chile is a libertarian heaven. Now, okay, no government that encroaches on our lives. You won. What do you do now? You still have the big problem, like, I don't know, I'll have to figure out how to be happy. Figure out what I want to do. I can't work in a think tank anymore because everything's solved. What are you going to do? And that is the real question, because in a free society, we are all individuals pursuing our own lives. Nobody gets to tell us what to do, what to fight for. You fight for yourself. That's it. And so if you really spend the time to try to imagine what would it look like. I'll give you America of the 19th century. If you really want to go to a time in history where it looked similar to what a capitalistic society would look like, just go and study what happened. People went to living in huts to skyscrapers in 80 years, 90 years. You think that we have innovation today? You know what it meant to live in the mid-19th century where every day there's something new we never heard about? Like steel, concrete, light, electricity, pipes, right? Trains, combustion engine, flight. We're talking about real innovation, guys. We're not talking about a new version of an iPhone.
Yeah.
We are stagnating because we're not free. We can be flying in space. All of you flying, there would be no traffic jams. We will fly from here to Australia in an hour. All of this is possible. The technology is there. So just try to imagine what world you're offering the people who are following you to free markets. It's not, less poverty, better social, public healthcare. No, we're offering something completely radical, which is a rethinking of all the structure of society. We are here under one law, objective law, and we're all living our lives. How wonderful would that be? I don't know that we all can all imagine that. If you want to ask us later what it would look like, please. But this is what it means to live a non-collectivized ethics, a personal individual ethics that answer the question, what do I want? What do my life look like? If you read The Fountain, and again, ask yourself, why is Howard Rourke this type of architect that has this non-compromising attitude toward anyone that tries to tell him how to build these buildings? He will go work in a quarry and not be an architect because you want to destroy his art, right? So this is what Ayn Rand offers us, a complete new view of what a human life should look like on an individual context, in the morality and ethics, and in the social context.
But it's also very important not to, I think it's important to actually project an ideal. If you literally don't have an ideal, you don't have something worth aspiring to. You have a betterment of condition, but you don't have a sense of this is what a proper society would actually look like. And so you were talking about, all these kinds of innovations and things that you would have that we don't have now simply because of the restrictions and so on. But it's important that the ideal be a moral ideal. And you think, and well, you have to become convinced of this, and you might not agree with it, but you have to think of this as a moral ideal. Just like someone stands up, this is justice, this is equality, and they take a moral perspective. They take a moral high ground, and they say, this is what morality demands. What is the matter with you people? Don't you see what's going on in the world? Look at the injustice, look at the inequality. And that's the voice of morality speaking. This is wrong, and you're allowing it. And then you want to go live for your own sake, And it's like that. You have to find a way to understand morality from the perspective from which you can take the moral high ground and say, my life is my own. It doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to the state, it doesn't belong to a majority. Make it an issue of justice, an issue of moral justice. But for that you need a new morality, because Ayn Rand is the only one offering you one.
I would just want to say, you think how we say right and left politically? She says, no, you're all on the same side. The left wants to take your money, mess with your pocket, and the right wants to mess in who's in your bed. It doesn't matter. It's both collectivist, and it's trying to rule your life from a collective. The axis is really, she says, communism, fascism, conservatism, all of those kind of ideologies are coming from a collectivist perspective. And the only alternative on the other side is individualistic. Show me a morality that is projecting a moral idea as individualistic, not collective. That is the only thing that we have, is what Ayn Rand offers us. A complete new perspective that says each man owns his own life. The only experiment, the historical experiment that ever took this seriously were the founding fathers, that were the children of the age of reason, that really understood the world with the power of reason and then applied reason to the question of morality and politics. And they came to the conclusion that there needs to be an individualistic view, and created the concept of individual rights with Locke and all of the other philosophers that led to the Enlightenment and the birth of America. And the only moral country that ever existed from Rand's perspective is America. That says, your life is yours. Go pursue your happiness. We won't tell you what to do. And see what happened in America. And now it's crumbling because of the cracks, the altruistic cracks in the code that they offered us. And she says, no, let's take it all the way. Let's rediscover or improve on the founding fathers by creating a completely rational, individualistic society that takes the individual as the moral, the only entity that we serve. You are the kings of your own life. Nobody tells you what to do, how to do it, and you take all the responsibility. It's hard. I think that communism and socialism are for lazy, irrational, lazy people. They want other people to take care of them. Right? Capitalism requires you the best in you. I read a really good book called Turning Pro. It asks you the question, do you want to live a life of a professional or an amateur? Because living a life of a professional is hard, demanding, messy, unpredictable, right? demanding. You have to show up every day and work and be better and better. You want to be like a Roger Federer. I don't know who your hero is. You know, mine is Ayrton Senna or Steve Jobs. I don't know who you care about, right? Those guys worked hard. They're the best, right? If your ideal is Mother Teresa, if your ideal is a monk somewhere thinking about the world good, or what's the
Jesus on the
Jesus
cross.
on a cross. Sorry for all the religious people in the room. then go live that life. And he says in that book, yeah, go live an amateur life, but the price is you live in a shadow. And the question is the shadow of what? The shadow of what you could be. It's casting a shadow on your life. The question is, are you going to live up to that potential, or are you going to live an amateur life or comfortable? I'll do whatever, I'll go. If my father is a lawyer and he tells me that he wants me to be a lawyer, I'll be a lawyer. I won't rock the boat too much. And that's not compatible with an independent life. So think about what, I think the right, as we call it, but really the individualistic front, political, needs to start thinking seriously. What are we offering? Because the left knows exactly. They've been working on it for 200, 250 years now. Since Immanuel Kant, they are offering us a new ideal that just fails every time, and they don't understand why. We'll just try communism again. We'll try socialism again. Because it's good. That's the ideal. Don't underestimate your enemies. They're amazing. There are good people who are trying to do the good. Now the good is pointing in the wrong direction. The question is, what is the good that you are offering them? And how sure you are that your good is the good, and how clear it is in your mind, and what is the vision you can build in people's mind. Ayn Rand's novels, this is what's amazing about Ayn Rand. She's not just a philosopher. She's a novelist. She's an artist. And she says, they ask her, what are you more, a philosopher or a novelist? She said, I'm primarily both, because there's no separation. In the novels, I give you the ideal. In the philosophy, I give you the, if you will, the explanation that explains the ideal. So if you want to learn about what does it mean to be rational from a personal perspective, go read The Fountainhead. If you want to understand what capitalism should look like, or how we deal with what's ruining the world right now, go read Atlas Shrugged. And then go read Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, that actually explains what is the ideal that we're offering. And without that ammunition, the left will destroy us. They're not fighting you on a political level. Forget about it. Politics is gone.
Or the right will.
The right, exactly.
Because we see now in America this movement, this national conservatives and stuff, and it's back to tradition, back to religion. Get religion combined with the state. Then you're going to go back to some sort of medievalism. I mean,
what is the alternative, right? What is the alternative that you're offering?
Sacrifice for the nation, sacrifice for God, or sacrifice for the poor, or sacrifice for the planet. It's sacrifice on one side, sacrifice on the other side. And there's no one but Ayn Rand says that your life is your own. The good is not sacrifice. The evil is sacrifice.
And I want to say something more. So remember how I said that philosophy is like a tower of metaphysics, epistemology, morality, and politics. So if you think about what the left is doing, politics is the outcome. They are winning the moral battle against the right. By the way, if you think about a young person who's thinking about what makes sense to me, do I go with religion and the right, or do I go with atheism? And they're all combined. By the way, if you choose the conservative side, so it's a package deal of free markets, but also faith. And if I choose the other side, I get kind of personal liberty, gay rights, everything good, but also collectivism. And those both are false alternative, right? So right, left, or what do I do? What the left really does really well is it's taking the moral high ground by saying we know what's good. Those guys are bad. They're primitive because of their religion, and they're primitive because they're bad. Sorry, they're bad because they're selfish. Yeah. We are the good. We are the future, right? I would say Ayn Rand gives you the tools to fight them, like Aaron said, on a moral basis. No, you are evil. You are going to kill people. What happened in Russia? What happened in Cambodia in the killing fields? What happened in China? What happens in North Korea? What happens in every place you try to apply this morality of socialism and collectivism? Okay? You are evil. You are the killers. You are the destroyers. We are the saints. We are the good people. We allow people to thrive. You want to see beauty and happiness and everything that is good about the world? Follow us. We'll give you that ideal. Now, I want to say another thing. It's not only the moral that they're winning. Where do you think that postmodernism is going at? Epistemology. What is true? They're going even deeper. Do you want to be a man? Wish it. Right? Wish it. It's going to make it true. So they're not only going down to morality and winning that, they're destroying the only tool that we have to even think what is good, which is reason. They're destroying reason. Immanuel Kant's life's project was to destroy reason. And he gave us the left. He gave us collectivism, he gave us communism, he gave us fascism, he gave us all the collectivists. Where did it come from? From Immanuel Kant, who is trying to destroy reason. You will find yourself in 20 years from now not knowing even how to talk to people anymore, because they will insert new concepts to the language that you don't know what to do with. And they will confuse you to the point where, like, I don't know what is the battle of ideas anymore. They're destroying your ability to think. They're destroying the ability of the young people to even understand the world. This is how bad it is. And so if you want to be good warriors for liberty, do the heavy lifting that they're doing. Go down to morality, discover the epistemology of Ayn Rand. There's a book called Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. I think one of her biggest achievements, I don't know if you'll agree with me on that, is a new theory of the formation of concepts. How do we as humans come to explain what a table is? Do you know how you do that as a baby? She explains that. You take it for granted that every word that I say you understand. What is a man? What defines a man?
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, I'll just end with that. The left is not lazy. They're working really hard for 200 years now. You want to fight them? Do the work. It's philosophical, it's not political.
Okay, so that's also something Rand is very critical about, the irrational society that we're living in.
Yeah.
So something politics is currently witnessing is the rise of new forms of populism, like look at Nicaragua and Latin America, and new forms of authoritarianism, look at Russia. So this political phenomena could perhaps be explained by what Rand meant by the irrational society. So the question would be, could the irrational society explain this political phenomena? And how could we face this phenomena while living a rational life?
Well, I don't know that she talks about the irrational society per se, but she did say frequently, she did comment frequently on the irrationalism and the trends of irrationalism going on in the culture. And she finds it's dominantly, like you were talking about Kant. I mean, that's a big issue. That's something that takes a lot of understanding of Kant and stuff. But if you step back and look at the kind of irrationalism that we have today in the universities, I mean, Ayn Rand at least puts the primary blame on Kant because, in essence, everything gets connected to everything. So just give me 1 second. So you said in her book Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, she comes out with an original theory of concept formation. Actually, how do we reach things not just like table, but man, justice, good? Like, how do you form these concepts from observation? You observe certain things, you notice certain commonalities they have, you integrate them into a form, an idea, so that you can hold it, and then you give it a word, like so you can hang on to it. You label it, in effect. And it's how does that process work? Well, I mean, you might think, okay, it's language development, and maybe you look to psychology, I don't know, like whatever, why is that philosophically important? And it's philosophically important because the Enlightenment ended because they couldn't give an account of that. So if you look at, how many of you guys have studied philosophy, like modern philosophy, Descartes, Locke, Hume, Spinoza, Hobbes, all those kind of figures? Well, one of the major problems they were trying to solve is that a theory of concepts. How is it that we can explain the unique power that reason, as a distinctive human faculty, gives us? It's that reason is our distinctive cognitive faculty. It's our means of acquiring knowledge, and yet we hold our knowledge in the form of concepts. And so if you can't explain how that works, and you get into all sorts of confusions, as they did. So the seeds of the end of enlightenment start with Descartes in the preceding century. And so while Isaac Newton is unlocking the secrets of nature on a magnificent and unprecedented scale, he's a hero to the whole century because of what he's done. And it's absolutely unbelievable. While he's doing that, using reason and observation, what are the philosophers doing? They're wondering if there's even a world. Like, is there even a world outside the mind to even know? And honest philosophers, really smart people, like John Locke, who I have a lot of respect for, he can't answer the question. Descartes, he's like, how do I know there's a world outside my mind? It's like, well, because there's a God, and God wouldn't be deceiving. God would have to be evil. And so he's not a deceiver, and so he just gets himself, and nobody bought that. No philosopher after that. It's like, that's crazy. This doesn't make any sense. And you watch philosophers really struggling to answer this question. David Hume, whose philosophy is a disaster, but I have a lot of respect for him too, actually. And he gets the end of his project. He wrote this work called I get Locke's and Hume's mixed up. Is it Enquiry or Essay on the, anyway, his first Enquiry, that's the Enquiry on the Human Mind. And it's a big book he wrote when he's about 24. And he gets to a certain point, he's like, I have no reason to think that there's an enduring world of objects outside of my mind. I have no reason to think, and philosophers have no reason to think, that there's an enduring self, that there is anything like me. And it's like, but at least he had the dignity to be depressed about it. And he said, like, I just have to get away from my work and my papers and go down to the pub, he says this, and play backgammon with my friends. And I come back to my apartment and I read what I've written and it's like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And yet, when I think about these issues philosophically, these are the conclusions I arrive at. And so he says, when you think about an external world and cause and effect relationships and entities that endure when you're not looking, right? All of these things, says Hume, these beliefs, arise from our ability to paint what goes on in our minds out onto the world. And he says it's a good thing we do that because otherwise we'd be dead. But we can't think that those things are actually out there. So it was a short move on Kant's part to say, yes, what we take of as aspects of reality, metaphysical phenomena like cause and effect, entities and things like that, these are features of the mind, that the mind structures our experience in a certain kind of way. Are there entities in the world? I don't know. There's literally no way to know. It's unknowable. Are there cause and effect relationships? Well, the mind structures them in causal relationships, so I cannot but perceive them in those relationships. But is reality itself actually causal? I don't know. There's literally no way to tell. It's impossible to tell. And at that point, it was like, well, where's your confidence in reason now? Reason's ability to know the world. What was Newton doing? He was describing the way that his mind structures his experience. And it turns reason and knowledge and understanding and science into a subjective, collectively subjective because we all have the same kind of mind, but it turns it into something subjective. Kant wouldn't agree with that, but I think that's what it boils down to. And now you have these different epistemologies. You have a feminist epistemology, and you have all these, all sorts of different kinds of ways of knowing, are coming out of this thing. Well, if your minds are structured in different ways, you literally have different realities. And I think for that reason, she thinks that what Kant did is he ended people's confidence that reason could know the world. And that was the essence, the core of the Enlightenment, and what it was so excited about, and why they thought there's unlimited progress ahead of us. And he ended that. And then you coming out of this, what do you get? You get Hegel. You ever try to read Hegel? Go try it. You go to a bookstore sometime. Just pick up a book by Hegel. Doesn't matter which one. Pick up the Phenomenology of Spirit. Pick up the Logic. Read a few pages, and God help you. So you get Marx, you get Hegel, and you get Marx and stuff, and then you get all these figures that we call continental philosophy and so on. A lot of forms of unreason. And what you get in university is largely that reason is subjective. Remember, if I say you prove something in reason, they say, who is reason? Now, the whole thing is, what it means is, the implication is, reason is subjective. Anybody can say. Like, in other words, there is no such thing as reasoning. There is no such thing as establishing causal connections by a logical process of thinking, where you can relate a claim to facts that support the claim. And that's the elimination of reason. And once you do that, then it's emotions, then it's tribalism, it's group worship, and let's find a dictator to tell us what to do.
And 2 and 2 can be 5. I don't know if you saw that.
And that's not a joke.
It's not a joke.
Yeah.
2 and 2 could be 5 because it's. I want to take it. I don't know. I'll connect to something that Aaron said. You want the whole human history in a minute? Just look at philosophy. The rise of ancient Greeks with the creation of philosophy, if you will, by the philosophical giants like Aristotle and Plato. Then Aristotle takes over, and we get like a wow. We can know reality. I don't know if you know the Raphael school of philosophy with Plato saying, pointing up to the skies, and Aristotle pointing, no, we can know reality with the power of our mind, reason, faith versus reason. So we get running water in Rome. And then the Romans adopt Christianity. We fall with faith, right, to the Dark Ages. This guy, Thomas Aquinas, rediscovers Aristotle, brings him back. Suddenly, wow, we can know the reality with the power of reason. You got the Renaissance, you got the Enlightenment, Newton, the scientific revolution of Newton. You got the Enlightenment thinkers, you got the founding fathers, you got the political revolution of America, you got the industrial revolution of America, you got wealth, and then boom, Kant brings back Plato. And what we're experiencing right now is a decline because of the rise of Plato and the decline of Aristotle. We're living this is why if you lived in the Renaissance, in the Enlightenment, the future was unbelievable. Just, I don't know what's going to happen here. In 5 years, it's going to be awesome. Every day, there's a new thing that blows your mind. Do you feel that about the future? Why? Why? Maybe Elon Musk will invent something new, but that's it. We worry about the future because we're on the decline. Because of Aristotle fading away, reason fading away, and Plato coming back with his hand up to the sky. It doesn't matter if the sky is the dictator, God, you name it, collective, what else we can, some other world that is not our reason. So I think if you really understand what Aaron was saying about the destruction of reason, that is why we're losing. We need to hold back and learn what reason is. And Ayn Rand, again, explains what it is, how it works, how it functions, what it means to integrate something into an objective truth. Capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, is objectively the only societal structure that is right for humans. The same as 2 and 2 is 4. It's not a matter of opinion. It's an integration, it's derived from the same process of coming to the idea that 2 and 2 is 4. It's inductive reasoning from the nature of the mind to how we live together. You would come to that conclusion. It's the same as, you remember you did math in school? You had to prove the whole way through and say, I proved it. Right? What is the 3 letters that you write at the end?
QED.
QED. Proved. You cannot refute that. It's proved. Ayn Rand does that to capitalism. Ayn Rand does that to everything, if you follow reason. The question, are we going to lead by reason or lead by emotion or some other thing? And by the way, if you, after that, you want to ask a question about the nature of emotions, she even explains that. What is the difference? Because reason is not anti-emotion. I'm very emotional, as you can see, right? But I'm not emotionalistic, which means I don't lead by emotion. I understand the nature of emotions and the fact that they're coming from thinking, value judgment that evoke the emotion that tells me is something good or bad for me. And I don't act by them. I'm acting by the reasoning that created them. So the whole process of emotion is another thing she explains to me. It made my life so much better, psychologically.
I think we've dumped a lot on you.
Yes, I know we've done a lot. It's something that took us years to integrate, but I hope the only thing coming out of this is be curious about what she has to say.
Yeah.
So, moving on to Rand's explanation of the individual against states or the state government. One of the most relevant discussions regarding objectivism is the considerations of the existence of a state under an objectively set of defined laws. Mm-hmm. So the government would be a means and not an end in itself, and it would function as a philosophical basis or in its basic capabilities for the protection of individual rights. And it would use the police, the military, or courts of justice. However, that's not what we're seeing today. We see that states and governments are taking way more attributions and way more responsibilities. And
Thank you very much.
Not to mention the almost pathological search for the permanent collaboration between the private sector and states, with no regard for the consequences of that. That could be corruption or the capture of power of pressure from interest groups. So, question for you, and this is another long one. What could we extract from Rand's work regarding the criticism of the role that states and governments play today? Is it realistic to aspire to that ideal of limited power from an objectivist standpoint? And what is the role of the individual when approaching that ideal?
Mm-hmm. Can you read the second to last sentence of that?
Sure. Is it realistic to aspire to that ideal of limited power from an objectivist standpoint?
Is the question, do you think that if you aspire to an ideal of limited government, that it will, by some sort of natural logical course, devolve into having less and like bigger and bigger and bigger government?
Right.
No, I mean, Ayn Rand certainly doesn't think that, and I don't think it's true. There's no historical determinism, some sort of deterministic process by which a state which is limited and has a proper constitution based on individual rights, that it will necessarily devolve into something else. So what's the point, et cetera, et cetera. No, there's no reason to think that, and there's no argument for that. But it is true that, what was it, Benjamin Franklin, one of the American founders, was said to have said, I'm not sure if he did, when he came out of the Constitutional Convention, they decided on a constitution, and someone asked him, what kind of government did you give us, Mr. Franklin? And he says, a republic, if you can keep it. So you have to keep it. And it means it can be, although you could snap your fingers, as Tal was saying, right now, and change the Chilean constitution. You can photocopy ours. Make that and make some improvements, and put it in. Well, you'll have to defend it, because if the people don't want what's in there, if there isn't some kind of broad agreement into some basics about it, you'll have to constantly defend it. Every new generation is their babies. They don't have any knowledge, and every generation you'll have to defend it. You'll have to explain why liberty is good. You have to explain why your life is your own. And you have to explain again. I mean, I talk to high school classes and middle school classes, which I love. It's so fun. I like kids. On the other hand, it's depressing. They don't know anything. They don't know anything about history. I teach, one of the books that I teach in these classes is Anthem. And it's a kind of a dystopian novel set in some ultra-collectivist kind of thing where the word I is even disappeared. It's vanished. And people call themselves we. And I tell them that some of the background of this is, she's coming from Soviet Russia. The author of the book is coming from Soviet Russia. She has familiarity with collectivism as an ideology. She's writing during the time. This is the whole history of the 20th century, is the rise and spread of collectivist dictatorships around the globe. That's the whole history of it. You get the Soviet Union, you get Nazi Germany, you get fascist Italy, you get fascist Spain, you get the rise of imperial Japan, and Russia is spreading communist satellites all through Latin America, everywhere. This is the whole cancer of this thing. They don't know. They don't know. Russia, they've heard the name, Russia, it's in the paper, right? Ukraine something. They don't know what that is. Collectivism, and their teacher doesn't look it up on Wikipedia. They just don't know. And so every generation will need to be taught to think, taught to value these kinds of things, and taught their own history. And if you don't do it, then you can say, sure, it'll devolve into something, but just by the virtue of people who are then passive and simply want the people to take care of them, and then you don't have any argument. So, yeah.
And I want to take another more, let's say, actionable view of that. First, remember that baby that you drop in the forest and they will die? They are born every day.
From a very low height.
From a low height even, not drop them like this. It's true.
We're selfish. We just drop them.
They don't know, and they need to learn, and the body of knowledge is philosophy, and you have to really teach. So if you ask me, what will be the first thing I would do to promote a free society? It would be to liberate education. Liberate education, because that's, as long as we're, putting our kids, our babies, into those prisons, I don't know how to call them, called schools, and then brainwash them, an adult talking to a kid for 7 hours a day, teaching them their view of history, their view of the world, and so on and so forth, we won't get another society. Public education is basically creating collectivist minds who are indoctrinated to collectivist morality. Seeing Greta Gutenberg, what's her name?
Greta Thunberg?
Thunberg. I pity her. Just seeing a depressed child, thinking about she's responsible to save the world. What are you talking about?
How dare you tell?
What?
How dare you?
Yeah. How dare I? It's really, I pity her and her psychology, and I think the people who brought her up to be that depressed and that guilty are monsters.
And it's the connection between between government and schools.
And government and school, and the morality that is the morality of guilt and altruism. Now I think that environmentalism is basically a new religion. The God is just Mother Nature. What does it mean to have zero impact? On what? What is the standard? The jungles or the cities? Because cities is where people live. If the morality is to make people better, we need bigger cities. Using more of Earth's resources to make our life better. Because we don't live in the forest, so why grow the forests? Did you think about that morality? Do you want the Amazonas? Protect the Amazonas? Yes, why not if we want clean air, but if I need the wood to build my house, what is the standard? I know that's very radical. I think we use as much fossil fuels. As much, because fossil fuels is for life. Okay, so what is your standard? The monkeys or the rats in the field, or human life? Okay, so it's really about discovering this new morality and liberating the ideas and disseminating it to the world as early as possible, because otherwise you won't get a generation like the giants of the Enlightenment who came to the conclusion that we need a revolution of individualism. It's a miracle that we have America. And that ideal is vanishing. It's going away. America is not what it used to be. There's no one to look up to anymore. And that is what's so dangerous. We can lose that. Liberty is a flower, a rose.
This is just something I think about. Sometimes the way I put it is that what happened in Pennsylvania in 1776 is one of the most rare and precious things in human history. But it's a rare and precious flower. It's something like you have to take care of it. And it's not something that just stands on its own firmly, you know, with all the... And yet, it's done a pretty good job, partly because we have a constitution. And we take, for the most part, the Constitution seriously. And we have a legal tradition. I mean, if it weren't for our legal system, we'd be gone. I mean, the executive is a disaster. The Congress is a mess. And, you know, it's not trusting politicians. It's trusting an embedded legal system where it's largely respects individual rights. If we didn't have the tradition we have for protecting free speech, just like in the Supreme Court and all the lesser courts and stuff, there's a deep, thick tradition of defense of free speech and freedom of expression. If it weren't for that tradition, it would already be drastically gone.
It's like the philosophy given to us through a paper that says, here's the wisdom. Can you apply it? And if we are smart enough to understand the reasoning and apply it, then we'll have a free society.
Because people don't understand what capitalism is. They don't know what individual rights are. That sounds crazy, but they don't know what individual rights are. Virtually no one thinks that your rights are inalienable. Just look around you. Do you have the right to your property, an inalienable right to your property? Of course not. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep raiding my wallet, my paycheck, and everything else all the time for anything they want, and they do it all around the world. So,
and on the other hand, do you have a right to food, to education,
to things,
to a hospital, to care, to things, to anything? No.
If you earned it.
Yeah, rights, individual rights. Again, I would ask you to read Man's Rights by Ayn Rand, where she really defines what a right is, where it comes from. It doesn't exist. We made that up. It's a concept. You don't look around and say, I have a right. Where is it? Can I hold it? And this is why it's so important to discover what it means. Right is a negative. It's something you cannot do to me. It's not a positive. You don't owe me anything. Nothing.
Well, I would put that a little differently.
Oh, a little different.
I'll put this a little differently, which will capture what you're getting at. But you don't have a right to stuff provided by others. What you have a right to is freedom of action. So that is a positive. But what you were saying by a positive,
in the sense
you don't have a right to a BMW unless you bought it, right? You have the right to take the actions necessary to purchase and own, retain, maintain your own goods.
In a way, what I meant by negative is the things that people cannot do to you, limit your life. Can you sell to anyone in Chile today a world where nobody owes anything to anyone? Can you sell that idea? Because that's the only chance you have. Otherwise, you're mixing poison with water and you're trying to sell it as like less poison. You need to understand that the only way, it sounds radical, I know, no public hospitals, no public schools, no free education, no food stamps. Do you understand what it means morally? It's the only chance we have. And if we don't really fully understand the full circle, that if you apply that logic, you will get the most thriving society, eradicate poverty forever. Health will be a solved problem. I think we could have been living for 200 years now if we would liberate health completely out of the hands of the government. So this is kind of how hard the challenge is.
So we're kind of running out of time.
Sure.
Yep.
Just what final recommendations would you have of readings besides Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead to give this fight from a rational standpoint?
You go first.
I mean, since I take it that this organization is predominantly focused on the political, I would suggest reading her book, which is a collection of her essays and some essays by some people who worked with her, called Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. And in that essay, you'll find reprinted 2 essays that were in her book, The Virtue of Selfishness, The Nature of Government, and Man's Rights. So the most important essays in that book, from my perspective at least, is the lead essay, which is called What is Capitalism? It's the longest one. It's a complex article. It's, well, magisterial. And the essays Man's Rights and the Nature of Government. I think if that's your start in that book, I think you'll be off on a good start. Yeah, I mean that's what I would.
Yeah, I would.
Oh, and one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then to understand today's world from the perspective of the rise of postmodernism, she wrote a book called The New Left: The Anti-Industrial Revolution. It's now been reprinted with a few new essays at the end, and the title's different. So the title is now called Return of the Primitive. And that, it's a lot of essays on the culture, from education to the universities to the riots in the University of Berkeley in the 60s and the whole rise of this phenomenon of the hippies and stuff, and what was actually going on at that time. Because we're seeing later ripple effects of that, and you'll read this and it's uncanny. It sounds like today. So Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal for politics and government, Return of the Primitive for the state of the culture and why we're in this sort of the state we are.
And if you go deeper, the virtue of selfishness gives you the ethical foundation that is so, I think, misunderstood, and without it, the whole structure is shaky. And so, but I would go, even though you asked the question, go and read Atlas Shrugged. I know it's this thick. It's not easy to read it, but it gives you a perspective. And for me, the fountainhead is life-changing in the sense that she gives you a moral ideal of what your life could look like if you completely applied yourself. I think that what we need to be selling is happiness, not economical prosperity. Money doesn't really matter. If you have enough money, right, to eat, to sleep, to have a shelter, and so on, that's it. It's done. Why do you think that $1 million more will make you happier? No. What will make you happier is to discover who you are, what you love about this life, and go pursue it. The pursuit of happiness needs to be discovered. And she has an amazing definition of happiness, which is the state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievements of one's values. If you read it backwards, she tells you, figure out what your values are. It's not easy. It's the most strategic question of your life. What should I be? What should I want? Then go pursue it in an uncompromising way. And the outcome would be an elevated sense of being that we call a happiness. It's a climate. It's not the weather. I'm not happy on Monday and miserable on Tuesday. I'm a happy person. And that is the goal of everything. Capitalism, morality, your life, money. It's all for one thing, your happiness. And so I think when we're talking about selling the idea of capitalism and the morality, it's like, do you know what it means to be happy?
Do you know what it means to be in love with your life and think that this is my life and that it's mine to live and that it's not yours and that I have self-esteem, so get away from me? Yeah. I mean, that perspective on your own life is I matter and this is an infringement.
Yeah.
You know, it's a philosophy of self-esteem.
And you see it's the opposite of what you hear in the street from the left. It's like, it's all like, no, I'm so empathetic to other people's needs, and I'm so caring about what other people need. It sounds really good because we buy into that morality of like, I care about you. I'm going to give my life for you, right? She says that's a lie. That is cheating. That is not what life requires. And if we all think like that, we're all going to die. Miserable and poor. And if you want to be happy, the sanctity of your own life, the sanctity of who you are, the discovery of who you are, and the pursuit, the relentless pursuit of happiness, like a Steve Jobs, like a Roger Federer, that is the rigor one needs in order to live a fulfilled life. Are you going to wake up every day and live it? Because you're going to die pretty soon, unfortunately. The only certain thing we know is that we're going to die one day.
So just to leave some time
so that's let's finish on a positive note. I think the real beautiful thing that she offers us in the Fountainhead is what happiness looks like and what a happy person how a happy person perceives themselves and the role of ethics in the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you, Aaron. Bueno, hemos llegado con estas recomendaciones al final de nuestro conversatorio. Antes de terminar, me gustaría recordarles que se suscriban a nuestro canal de YouTube, le den clic a la campanita para las notificaciones y que nos sigan en redes sociales, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok y Twitter, donde publicamos contenido a diario. Muchas gracias por venir, muchas gracias por estar conectados y muchas gracias a nuestros invitados. Un aplauso, por favor.